In the glittering ballroom of Ashbourne Hall, a masquerade hides deadly secrets. When a wealthy financier collapses, poisoned by a hidden needle, Hercule Poirot steps into a web of deception. A desperate lord, a graceful dancer, a mysterious stranger in a crimson mask. Each has a motive, each a secret, a vial, a note, a key, clues to a treacherous deal in Rotterdam. Can Poirot unravel the truth before the killer strikes again? Murder, intrigue, and masks await in the Crimson Mask. Chapter 1. The Masquerade begins. The October evening draped London in a chill mist, its tendrils curling around the iron gates of Ashbourne Hall, a sprawling Georgian estate on the city's edge. Within, a constellation of lights blazed, defying the gloom, as Lord Reginald Ashbourne's annual masquerade ball unfolded in all its opulence. The air thrummed with anticipation, for this was no mere gathering. It was a spectacle, a kaleidoscope of wealth, intrigue, and hidden faces, where secrets danced as freely as the waltzing couples. Hercule Poirot, the fastidious Belgian detective, stood at the threshold of the grand ballroom, his polished patent leather shoes gleaming under the chandelier's cascade. His invitation, delivered in an embossed envelope sealed with crimson wax, had puzzled him. Lord Ashbourne was no intimate acquaintance, yet the summons had been personal, almost insistent. Poirot, ever attuned to the whispers of motive, suspected the invitation was no whim. His gray cells, those tireless engines of deduction, hummed with curiosity, urging him to step into the glittering fray. The ballroom was a marvel of excess, walls draped in damask, mirrors reflecting 1,000 candle flames, and a parquet floor polished to a mirror's sheen. Masked figures swirled in a symphony of silk and velvet, their identities cloaked by feathers, jewels, and intricate designs. A string quartet played Vivaldi, the notes weaving through laughter and the clink of crystal. Poirot, in a simple black domino mask that did little to obscure his distinctive mustache, observed the scene with the precision of a watchmaker. Each gesture, each glance, was a thread in the tapestry of human nature, and he intended to unravel its pattern. Lord Ashbourne himself, a robust man in his 50s with a mane of silver hair, presided over the revelry. His mask, a Venetian masterpiece of gold filigree and obsidian plumes, caught the light as he greeted guests with a booming laugh that echoed off the vaulted ceiling. "Welcome, welcome," he called, his voice carrying the practiced warmth of a seasoned host. Yet, Poirot noted a tightness in his smile, a fleeting shadow in his eyes. The man was playing a part, and not entirely convincingly. Among the throng, a figure drew Poirot's attention. Madame Celeste Dubois, a ballerina whose fame had crossed the Channel from Paris. Her silver mask, adorned with delicate filigree, framed eyes as dark and luminous as a midnight lake. She moved with a grace that seemed to defy gravity, her gown of sapphire tulle shimmering as she glided through a waltz. Whispers followed her, admiration, envy, and something sharper. Poirot's gaze lingered. Her poise was flawless, but her hands, clasping her partner's, betrayed a faint tremor. At the room's periphery, another figure stood apart, his presence like a discordant note in the evening's melody. Clad in a crimson mask that covered half his face, he wore a cloak of deep burgundy, its folds heavy with intent. His eyes, visible through the mask's slits, darted with a vigilance that spoke of purpose beyond mere festivity. Poirot's instincts stirred. This man, introduced to the footman as Victor Grayson, was no ordinary guest. His posture, erect, disciplined, suggested a military past or perhaps something more clandestine. The clock on the mantel, a gilded relic of the Regency, chimed 11, its notes swallowed by the din. Poirot sipped a glass of champagne, its bubbles sharp against his palate, and circulated among the guests. He overheard fragments of conversation, stock prices, scandalous affairs, and murmurs of a lucrative deal involving Sir Henry Vaughan, a financier whose name was synonymous with ruthless ambition. Sir Henry, resplendent in a peacock-feathered mask, held court near the refreshment table, his laughter loud, but his eyes wary. Poirot noted the man's restless fingers, toying with a gold watch chain, and the way he scanned the room as if expecting an ambush. As midnight approached, the music swelled, and the dancers spun faster, their masks lending an air of reckless abandon. Poirot, stationed near a marble pillar, watched Madame Celeste break from her partner and slip toward the terrace doors, her movements swift but not unnoticed. Moments later, Sir Henry followed, his stride purposeful. The crimson-masked Grayson, too, drifted in that direction, his cloak blending into the shadows. Then, a scream, sharp, primal, pierced the revelry. The music faltered, glasses stilled, and all eyes turned to the terrace doors. Sir Henry Vaughan lay sprawled on the flagstones, his peacock mask askew, revealing a face contorted in agony. His lips, stained an unnatural purple, glistened in the moonlight. Poirot was at his side in an instant, his small frame moving with surprising agility. He knelt, careful not to disturb the scene, and examined the body. The pulse was absent, the eyes fixed. A faint, bitter scent, almonds perhaps, hung in the air. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured, his voice a whisper of steel. "This is no accident. It is murder." The crowd pressed forward, gasps and whispers rippling like a tide. Lord Ashbourne pushed through, his mask discarded, his face ashen. Madame Celeste stood frozen, her hands clutching her gown. Grayson lingered at the edge, his crimson mask still in place, his expression unreadable. Poirot's eyes flicked from one to another, his mind already weaving the threads of suspicion. The masquerade had ended, but a darker game had just begun. Chapter 2. The Hidden Vial. The air in Ashbourne Hall grew thick with unease as the masquerade's glittering facade shattered. The grand ballroom, moments ago a stage for laughter and dance, now stood hushed, its opulence mocked by the stark reality of death. Sir Henry Vaughan's body lay just beyond the terrace doors, a grim tableau under the moon's pale gaze. Hercule Poirot, his compact figure radiating quiet authority, knelt beside the corpse, his eyes darting with the precision of a jeweler inspecting a flawed gem. The crowd, a kaleidoscope of unmasked faces, hovered at a distance, their whispers a low hum of fear and curiosity. Inspector Japp arrived with his usual bustle, his overcoat flapping like a raven's wings as he strode through the French doors. His weathered face, lined with the weariness of a man too often called to scenes of tragedy, softened slightly at the sight of Poirot. "You again, Poirot," he said, his tone a blend of exasperation and grudging respect. "Can't seem to stumble on a murder without you sniffing about. What's your take on this one?" Poirot rose, dusting his gloved hands with a fastidious flick. "It is murder, mon ami, and a most deliberate one. Observe the lips. Purple, yes, with a faint sheen. This suggests poison, likely cyanide, administered with cunning." His mustache twitched, a subtle signal of his mind's restless machinery. "But the method, that is the puzzle. We must find how the poison reached Sir Henry, and who placed it there." Jap nodded, signaling to the constables who had begun cordoning off the terrace. The coroner, a dour man named Dr. Hargrove, crouched beside the body, his fingers probing with clinical detachment. "Cyanide, I'd wager," he muttered, confirming Poirot's suspicion. Death was swift, within minutes. No signs of a struggle, though. He paused, his brow furrowing. Odd thing, though. Found this in his waistcoat pocket. He held up a small glass vial, no larger than a thimble, its interior clouded with a faint residue. Empty, save for that telltale trace. Poirot's eyes gleamed as he took the vial, holding it to the light. "Curieux," he murmured. "This vial, it is not the work of a careless poisoner. It is too deliberate, too convenient." He turned to Jap. "We must test the residue, but I suspect it will confirm cyanide. Yet, I wonder, did Sir Henry carry this himself, or was it placed upon him to mislead?" Jap grunted, scribbling in his notebook. "Right then. Let's have everyone's masks off and statements taken. No one leaves until we've sorted this mess." He barked orders to his men, who began herding the guests into the ballroom, their finery now a stark contrast to the grim task at hand. Poirot watched as Lord Ashbourne, his golden mask discarded, mopped his brow with a handkerchief, his joviality replaced by a pallor that aged him a decade. Madame Celeste. Dubois, her silver mask now a prop on a nearby table, stood with arms crossed, her dark eyes flickering between grief and defiance. Victor Grayson, the crimson-masked stranger, removed his disguise with slow deliberation, revealing a lean face with sharp cheekbones and eyes that betrayed nothing. Poirot's gaze lingered on Grayson. The man's composure was too perfect, his movements too measured. "Monsieur Grayson," Poirot said, approaching him, "you are a stranger to this gathering, non? Yet you move with the assurance of one who knows his purpose. Tell me, what brought you to Ashbourne Hall?" Grayson's lips curved into a faint smile, neither warm nor hostile. "A business acquaintance of Lord Ashbourne invited me. I'm a merchant, Monsieur Poirot, dealing in imports. Nothing more." His voice was smooth, but Poirot detected a trace of steel beneath it. A man accustomed to guarding secrets. "Imports," Poirot repeated, his tone neutral but his eyes piercing. "And did these imports bring you into contact with Sir Henry Vaughan?" Grayson's smile did not waver. "We spoke briefly. He was interested in trade routes to the east, a passing conversation, nothing more." He inclined his head as if to dismiss further inquiry, but Poirot's gray cells were already weaving a thread of suspicion. Grayson's alibi was vague, his presence too neatly explained. Poirot turned his attention to the terrace, where the constables were scouring for clues. The flagstones, slick with dew, bore no obvious signs of a struggle. Sir Henry's glass of champagne, half drunk, rested on a nearby table, its contents now under scrutiny. Poirot examined the glass, noting its pristine clarity. No residue, no discoloration. "If the poison was not in the drink," he mused aloud, "then how? The lips suggest ingestion, but the vial? It is too small to have held a fatal dose in liquid form." Jap joined him, his notebook now filled with hurried scrawls. "We've got statements from half the guests already. Most saw nothing unusual, but a few mentioned Sir Henry arguing with Madame Celeste earlier in the evening. Heated, they said, though they couldn't catch the words. "An argument," Poirot said, his voice low. "This is most interesting. And what of Lord Ashbourne? His demeanor, it is not that of a man at ease." Jap snorted. "He's sweating like a pig in a butcher's shop. Says he was at the entrance all evening, greeting guests. Dozens can vouch for him, but I don't trust that ruddy face of his. Too much money at stake. Sir Henry was brokering some deal for him, wasn't he?" "Oui, a merger with a Dutch firm," Poirot confirmed, recalling Ashbourne's earlier admission. "A matter of great consequence, perhaps enough to drive a man to desperate acts." He paused, his mind sifting through possibilities. "But we must not leap to conclusions, mon ami. The truth, it hides behind the masks of motive and opportunity." Poirot requested a private moment with the guest list, which a harried footman provided. The names were a who's who of London's elite, bankers, aristocrats, and a smattering of foreign dignitaries. Sir Henry's name stood out, not only for his wealth, but for his reputation as a man who played hard and loved harder. His enemies were legion, but who among this assembly had the means and nerve to kill so publicly? The detective's thoughts were interrupted by a young constable, breathless from his search. "Sir, we found something near the terrace railing. Thought you'd want to see." He held out a silk handkerchief, monogrammed with the initials C.D., Celeste Dubois. Poirot took it, noting a faint stain, barely visible at its edge. "This must be tested," he said, handing it to Japp. "It may be nothing, or it may be everything." Japp raised an eyebrow. "You think the dancer's mixed up in this? She's got the charm, I'll give her that. But poison? Seems a bit cold for a ballerina." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "The heart, Inspector. It is capable of great beauty and great darkness. We shall see which beats in Madame Celeste." The investigation moved indoors, where the guests, now stripped of their masks, sat in uneasy clusters. Poirot approached Lord Ashbourne, who was nursing a brandy by the fireplace, his hands unsteady. "My lord," Poirot began, his voice soft but commanding. "You knew Sir Henry well, non? Tell me of this merger. Was it so vital that his death would bring ruin?" Ashbourne's eyes darted to the flames as if seeking escape. "It was everything," he admitted, his voice hoarse. "My estate? It's been bleeding money for years. Sir Henry's deal with the Dutch was to shore it up. New capital, new opportunities. Without it, I'm finished." He drained his glass, the clink of crystal against his teeth betraying his nerves. "But I swear, Poirot, I was at the entrance when he died. Ask anyone." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "And yet, grief alone does not explain your unease. What did Sir Henry know that made you fear him?" Ashbourne flinched, his ruddy cheeks paling. "Nothing," he said too quickly. "He was a friend, a partner. I had no reason to wish him harm." Poirot filed the response away, his mind noting the tremor in Ashbourne's voice. He moved next to Madame Celeste, who sat apart, her sapphire gown pooling around her like a fallen sky. "Madame," he said, bowing slightly, "you were seen with Sir Henry earlier. An argument, perhaps, something that drove him to the terrace?" Her eyes, sharp and wary, met his. "He was forward," she said, her French accent lending a musical lilt to her words. "He thought his wealth entitled him to my affections. I told him no, firmly. That was all." She hesitated, then added, "I danced afterward, in full view of the guests. I could not have been near him when he died." Poirot's gaze softened, but his mind was relentless. "And this handkerchief, with your initials, found near the body. What story does it tell?" Her breath caught, a fleeting crack in her composure. I must have dropped it earlier. I was on the terrace for air, nothing more." Her fingers twisted the edge of her shawl, a gesture Poirot noted with interest. He excused himself and sought out Victor Grayson, who stood by a window, his silhouette framed against the night. "Monsieur Grayson," Poirot said, his tone deceptively mild. "Your conversation with Sir Henry, it was brief, you say. Yet a maid saw you near the terrace, adjusting your cloak, moments before the scream. What business kept you there?" Grayson's eyes narrowed, but his voice remained steady. "I stepped out for a cigarette. The ballroom was stifling. I saw Sir Henry. Yes, but he was alive and arguing with Madame Celeste when I returned inside." He produced a silver cigarette case, as if to corroborate his story, but Poirot's attention was on the man's hands, long, steady, the hands of a marksman or a surgeon. The detective stepped back, his mind a whirlwind of details. The vial, the handkerchief, the purple lips, the crimson mask. Each was a piece of the puzzle, but the picture remained elusive. He approached Japp, who was overseeing the collection of glasses and plates for analysis. "The poison, Inspector," Poirot said. "It was not in the champagne, nor in the food. The lips suggest ingestion, but the vial? It is a distraction, I think. We must look for a method more intimate, more precise." Japp scratched his chin. "You're thinking something like a coated needle, maybe? Or a kiss, given Sir Henry's reputation?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "You are learning, mon ami. But a kiss, it leaves traces, and Madame Celeste's lips are untainted. No, we must consider a delivery so subtle it leaves only a whisper of its presence." The coroner returned with preliminary findings. The vial's residue was indeed cyanide, but its quantity suggested it had been emptied recently. "Couldn't have held enough to kill him," Hargrove said. "Looks like it was planted, or he was carrying it for some reason." Poirot nodded, his mind racing. The vial was a red herring, designed to mislead. But why? To implicate Sir Henry in his own death, perhaps, or to divert suspicion from the true method. He requested a closer examination of the body, accompanying Hargrove to the makeshift morgue in a side room. There, under the harsh light of a lamp, Poirot noticed a detail overlooked in the chaos. A tiny mark on Sir Henry's wrist, no larger than a pinprick, surrounded by a faint bruise. "Voilà," he whispered. "The truth begins to emerge." He turned to Japp. "This mark, it is the key. A needle, perhaps, delivering the poison directly to the blood. The vial was placed to confuse us, to make us think of a drink or a pill. But this is the work of a mind both bold and meticulous." Japp's eyes widened. "A needle? Blimey, that's clever. But who had the chance to get that close to him?" Poirot's smile was grim. "That, Inspector, is what we shall discover. The murderer is among us, hiding behind a mask of innocence. But Hercule Poirot, he sees through such disguises." As the night deepened, the guests were dismissed to their rooms, under strict orders not to leave the estate. Poirot lingered in the ballroom, his eyes tracing the path from the terrace to the crowd. The chandelier's light had dimmed, casting long shadows that seemed to whisper of secrets yet to be uncovered. The handkerchief, the pinprick, the crimson mask. Each was a thread in a tapestry of deception, and Poirot was determined to unravel it, stitch by meticulous stitch. Chapter 3. The Host's Burden. The dawn broke over Ashbourne Hall with a reluctant gray light, seeping through the heavy drapes of the grand estate and casting a pallor over its somber occupants. The revelry of the previous night was a distant memory, replaced by an oppressive silence that clung to the corridors like damp fog. Hercule Poirot, ever an early riser, stood in the morning room, his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes fixed on the mist-shrouded gardens beyond the window. The death of Sir Henry Vaughan had transformed the Masquerade into a theater of suspicion, and Poirot, with his unerring instinct for truth, was determined to peel back the layers of deceit. Lord Reginald Ashbourne, the host of the ill-fated ball, had retreated to his study, a sanctuary of oak-paneled walls and ancestral portraits that seemed to watch with disapproval. Poirot found him there, slumped in a leather armchair, a decanter of brandy within reach. The man's robust frame, so commanding the previous evening, now seemed diminished, his silver hair disheveled, his eyes red-rimmed from sleeplessness or something deeper. The golden Venetian mask, once a symbol of his authority, lay discarded on the desk, its filigree dulled in the morning light. "Lord Ashbourne," Poirot began, his voice soft but carrying the weight of inquiry. "You will permit Hercule Poirot to ask a few questions, non? The death of Sir Henry Vaughan, it is a tragedy that touches you closely, I think." Ashbourne's hand tightened around his glass, the amber liquid trembling. "A tragedy, yes," he said, his voice rough. "Sir Henry was a friend, a business ally. His loss is catastrophic." He met Poirot's gaze, his expression a mix of grief and defiance. "But I had no hand in it, Monsieur Poirot. I was at the ballroom entrance greeting guests when he fell. Ask anyone, my staff, the guests. They'll tell you." Poirot inclined his head, his mustache a perfect curve of skepticism. "Your alibi, it is strong, monsieur. Yet the heart of a man is not so easily read as a guest list. Tell me of this merger with the Dutch firm. It was, I understand, the lifeline for your estate?" Ashbourne's jaw tightened, and he rose, pacing to the window as if to escape the question. "You've heard the rumors, then," he said, his back to Poirot. "The estate's been bleeding money for years, bad investments, rising costs. Sir Henry's deal was to merge my holdings with a Rotterdam firm, bringing in fresh capital. It would have saved me." He turned, his eyes flashing. "But I didn't kill him, Poirot. His death ruins me more than anyone." Poirot's gaze was unwavering, his gray cells sifting through the man's words. "And what did Sir Henry ask in return for this salvation?" "Men of his ilk, they do not offer such gifts without a price." A flush crept up Ashbourne's neck, and he hesitated, his fingers drumming on the desk. "He suggested certain concessions," he admitted. "Influence over my board, a share of profits. But it was business, nothing more." His voice faltered, and Poirot noted the flicker of unease, the slight tremor of a man concealing more than he revealed. "Business," Poirot echoed, his tone deceptively mild. "Yet business, it can breed resentment, non? Perhaps Sir Henry pressed too hard, or knew something you wished to keep hidden." Ashbourne's hand slammed on the desk, the sound sharp in the quiet room. "I've nothing to hide," he snapped, then caught himself, his shoulders sagging. "Forgive me, Poirot. This has shaken me. I swear, I was nowhere near the terrace when he died." Poirot nodded, his expression inscrutable. "Merci, Lord Ashbourne. For now, I will trouble you no further. But the truth, it has a way of revealing itself, even to those who guard it closely." Leaving the study, Poirot descended to the gardens, where the morning mist curled around rose bushes and gravel paths. The terrace, now cleared of Sir Henry's body, was a silent witness to the crime. Poirot paced its length, his polished shoes crunching softly, his mind reconstructing the fatal moment. The pinprick on Sir Henry's wrist, discovered in the makeshift morgue, was the key. A needle delivering cyanide with surgical precision. The vial, with its trace of poison, was a distraction, a prop in a clever charade. But who had the skill, the nerve, to execute such a plan? A groundskeeper, raking leaves nearby, caught Poirot's eye. The man, weathered and taciturn, paused at Poirot's approach. "Monsieur," Poirot said, his French accent lending a courteous air. "You were working last evening, oui? Did you see anyone on the terrace before the tragedy?" The groundskeeper scratched his cap, his eyes narrowing. "Aye, sir. Saw that dancer lady, the French one, step out for a bit. Looked upset, she did. And that fellow in the red mask, he was lingering near the railing, fiddling with his cloak. Didn't think much of it at the time." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Most interesting. And Lord Ashbourne? Did he venture here?" The man shook his head. "Not that I saw. He was at the door, like he always is, playing the grand host." Poirot thanked him and continued his circuit, his mind weaving the groundskeeper's words into the tapestry of evidence. Madame Celeste's presence on the terrace, confirmed by multiple witnesses, suggested a confrontation with Sir Henry, but her delicate hands seemed ill-suited to the mechanics of a needle. Victor Grayson, with his military bearing, was a more likely candidate, yet his cool denial demanded scrutiny. And Ashbourne, his alibi was robust, but his desperation was palpable. Could a man so burdened by debt have orchestrated a murder from a distance? Returning to the ballroom, Poirot found Inspector Japp conferring with a constable over a tray of collected items. Sir Henry's champagne glass, a few discarded napkins, and the silk handkerchief with Madame Celeste's initials. "Anything new, Poirot?" Japp asked, his tone hopeful but strained. "The handkerchief," Poirot said, lifting it with gloved fingers. "The stain? It has been tested?" Japp nodded. "Not poison, just wine. Spilled claret, likely. Doesn't prove much, but it places her near the scene." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "It proves she was careless, perhaps, or that someone wished us to think so. We must speak with Madame Celeste again. But first I wish to examine Sir Henry's belongings. His watch chain, his cufflinks, small things. They often speak loudly." Japp led him to a side room, where Sir Henry's effects were laid out on a table. A gold watch, a monogrammed cigarette case, a few pound notes, and a folded scrap of paper, overlooked in the initial search. Poirot unfolded it with care, revealing a single word scrawled in hurried ink: Rotterdam. His gray cells sparked. The Dutch merger, or something more sinister? "This paper," Poirot said, holding it up to Japp. "It is a clue, but to what? A reminder of the deal, or a warning of betrayal?" Japp scratched his chin. "Could be either. Sir Henry was neck-deep in shady dealings, from what I hear. Maybe someone didn't want that merger to go through." Poirot tucked the paper into his pocket, his mind racing. The merger was the thread connecting Ashbourne to Sir Henry, but Grayson's presence hinted at broader stakes, perhaps international, given his guarded demeanor. And Madame Celeste, with her beauty and her secrets, could not be dismissed. Had Sir Henry's pursuit of her crossed a line, or was her role in this drama more calculated? Poirot sought out the butler, a stoic man named Hawkins, who had overseen the evening service. "Monsieur Hawkins," Poirot said, his voice smooth as velvet, "you observed the guests closely, oui? Tell me of Sir Henry's movements before his death. With whom did he speak, and where?" Hawkins, his posture rigid, considered the question. "Sir Henry was in high spirits early on, sir, circulating with the guests. He spoke at length with Lord Ashbourne near the refreshment table, then with Madame Celeste during her dance. Later, I saw him step onto the terrace, alone at first. The gentleman in the crimson mask followed shortly after, though I couldn't say if they spoke. Poirot's eyes gleamed. And Madame Celeste, she was on the terrace as well? Yes, sir. She slipped out just before Sir Henry. I thought she needed air. She looked flushed, agitated. Poirot thanked the butler, his mind cataloguing the timeline. Sir Henry, Celeste, Grayson, all on the terrace in the moments before the scream. The pinprick suggested a fleeting, intimate act, but the vial's presence muddled the picture. Was it a clumsy attempt to mislead, or a deliberate stroke of misdirection? As he returned to the morning room, Poirot paused before a portrait of Ashbourne's father, a stern figure in military garb. The eyes seemed to follow him, a reminder of the weight of legacy. Ashbourne's desperation was not merely financial. It was a matter of pride, of preserving a name. Poirot's thoughts turned to motive. Had Ashbourne, despite his alibi, found a way to eliminate the man who held his future in his hands? Or was Grayson, with his cryptic purpose, the true architect of the crime? The detective's reverie was broken by a soft tread behind him. Madame Celeste stood in the doorway, her face pale but composed. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her accent a melodic thread in the silence. "You suspect me, don't you? I swear I did not harm him." Poirot turned, his expression gentle but probing. "Madame, the truth is like a dance. It requires precision, not passion. You were seen with Sir Henry, arguing, then on the terrace. Your handkerchief, it was found nearby. These are facts, not suspicions. What did you and Sir Henry discuss?" Her lips parted, then closed as if weighing her words. He wanted more than I could give," she said at last. "He spoke of patronage, of making my career in London. But his price was too high. I refused him, and he grew angry. That was all." Poirot nodded, his gaze lingering on her hands, delicate but strong, capable of grace, but not, he thought, of murder. "And the terrace, madame? Why did you go there?" "For air," she said quickly. The ballroom was stifling, and his words, they upset me. I was there only a moment before returning to dance. Poirot bowed slightly, dismissing her with a murmur of thanks. Her story held, but it was incomplete, like a melody missing its final note. He resolved to watch her closely, for the truth often hid in the spaces between words. The morning wore on, and Poirot felt the weight of the case settling upon him. The pinprick, the vial, the Rotterdam note. Each was a fragment of a larger truth, a puzzle that demanded his unique genius. As he stepped into the garden once more, the mist parting, to reveal the stark beauty of Ashbourne Hall, Poirot knew. The answer lay not in the evidence alone, but in the hearts of those who wore their masks, even now, in the light of day. Chapter 4. The Dancer's Grace. The morning mist had burned away, leaving Ashbourne Hall bathed in a crisp autumn light that did little to dispel the chill of suspicion lingering within its walls. Hercule Poirot, his impeccable suit a stark contrast to the disarray of the previous night's tragedy, made his way to the guest wing, where Madame Celeste Dubois had taken refuge. The ballroom's echoes of music and laughter were gone, replaced by the muted tread of constables and the low murmur of anxious guests. Sir Henry Vaughan's murder had cast a long shadow, and Poirot, with his unerring instinct for truth, sought to pierce its depths. Madame Celeste's suite was a haven of elegance, its furnishings draped in soft silks and adorned with delicate porcelain. She stood by a tall window, her sapphire gown exchanged for a simple dress of dove-gray muslin, yet her poise remained that of a dancer, every movement imbued with a grace that seemed to defy the gravity of her circumstances. Her silver mask, now a relic of the masquerade, rested on a side table, its filigree catching the sunlight like a spider's web. Poirot noted its placement, careless yet deliberate, as if inviting scrutiny. "Madame Dubois," Poirot began, his voice a gentle cadence, "you will permit Hercule Poirot to intrude upon your solitude. The matter of Sir Henry Vaughan's death, it is most pressing, and your presence on the terrace last night places you at the heart of this mystery." Celeste turned, her dark eyes meeting his with a mixture of defiance and vulnerability. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her French accent lending a lyrical quality to her words, "I have told you what I know. Sir Henry was persistent, but I did not harm him. I am a dancer, not a murderer." Her hands, delicate as porcelain, clasped the back of a chair, their faint tremor betraying her composure. Poirot inclined his head, his moustache a perfect arc of scrutiny. "Oui, madame, a dancer you are, and one of great renown. Yet the stage of life, it is not so different from the ballet. Each step must be precise, each gesture intentional. You argued with Sir Henry, did you not? A witness saw you, your voices low but heated, before you stepped onto the terrace." Her lips parted, then closed, as if weighing the cost of truth. "It was as I said," she replied, her voice steady but soft. "He sought my favor, offering patronage for my performances in London. He spoke of wealth, of influence, but his intentions were clear. I refused him, and he did not take it kindly. I left him in the ballroom and sought air on the terrace. That is all." Poirot's eyes narrowed, his gray cells sifting through her words. "And yet, madame, a footman places you on the terrace moments before Sir Henry's collapse. Your handkerchief, with its telltale stain, was found nearby. These are not accusations, but facts that demand explanation." Celeste's fingers tightened on the chair, her knuckles whitening. "The handkerchief. I must have dropped it earlier. I was upset, distracted. As for the terrace, I needed a moment to collect myself. The air was cool, the stars clear. I returned to the ballroom to dance my solo waltz, as many can attest." She gestured toward the window, as if the gardens themselves could vouch for her. Poirot paced slowly, his polished shoes silent on the thick carpet. "Your waltz, it was magnificent, madame. The guests, they were enraptured. Yet the timing, it is curious. Sir Henry followed you to the terrace, and soon after, he was dead. A pinprick on his wrist, delivering cyanide, a method most precise. Your hands, they are skilled in the art of grace, but are they capable of such a deed?" Her eyes flashed, a spark of indignation breaking through her reserve. "You think me a poisoner, monsieur? My hands create beauty, not death. I have no knowledge of needles or cyanide." She extended her hands, palms up, as if offering them for inspection. Poirot noted their elegance, slender, unmarred, the fingers of an artist, not an assassin. "Non, madame," he said, his tone softening. "I do not think, I observe. And what I observe is a woman caught in a web of circumstance. Tell me, did Sir Henry speak of anything beyond his affections? A business matter, perhaps, or a name, Rotterdam, for instance?" Celeste's brow furrowed, a fleeting shadow crossing her face. "Rotterdam? No, he mentioned no such thing. He spoke only of himself, his desires. I wished only to be free of him." Her voice held a note of finality, but Poirot sensed a gap in her narrative, a hesitation that whispered of secrets unspoken. He thanked her and withdrew, his mind a whirl of details. The pinprick, the vial, the handkerchief, each was a piece of the puzzle, but the picture remained elusive. Celeste's story was plausible, yet incomplete, like a dance interrupted mid-step. Her presence on the terrace, her argument with Sir Henry, placed her dangerously close to the crime. But the mechanics of the murder required a precision she seemed unlikely to possess. Or was her grace itself a mask, concealing a colder intent? Poirot descended to the library, where Inspector Japp was sifting through witness statements, his face etched with frustration. "This case is a right mess, Poirot," he grumbled, tossing a notebook onto the table. "Half the guests saw nothing, the other half saw too much. Celeste's waltz checks out. Dozens confirm she was dancing when the scream went up. But that terrace business bothers me. She was there, and so was Grayson." Poirot nodded, his eyes scanning the room's shelves, their leather-bound volumes a silent audience to their discussion. "The terrace, it is the stage of this crime, mon ami. Madame Celeste, she admits to being there, but only for air. Monsieur Grayson, he claims a cigarette. And yet Sir Henry dies, his wrist marked by a needle's kiss. We must consider the method, swift, silent, intimate." Japp leaned back, rubbing his temples. "Intimate, eh? Sir Henry was a ladies' man, no doubt. Could Celeste have slipped him something in a moment of passion? A poisoned ring, maybe?" Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile playing beneath it. "A romantic notion, Inspector, but unlikely. Cyanide leaves traces, and Madame Celeste's lips, her hands, they are clean. No, the needle suggests a calculated act, not a lover's impulse. We must look to those who had opportunity and motive." He requested the guest list again, cross-referencing names with Japp's notes. Sir Henry's connections were vast, his enemies subtler, but no less potent. A footman's statement caught Poirot's eye, a brief mention of Sir Henry speaking with Lord Ashbourne near the refreshment table, their voices low, their postures tense. "This merger," Poirot mused, "it binds Ashbourne to Sir Henry, but what else did it conceal? And Grayson, his presence, it is too convenient." "None?" Japp shrugged. "Grayson's story holds, barely. Says he's a merchant, but I've got men digging into his background. Something about him doesn't sit right. Too calm, too slick." Poirot's gaze drifted to a vase of roses on the table, their petals wilting in the morning heat. The calm of a man who knows his purpose, perhaps. "We must learn more of Monsieur Grayson, but for now, let us return to the terrace. I wish to see it in daylight." The terrace, bathed in sunlight, revealed little more than the night had. The flagstones were swept clean, the railing unmarred save for a faint scratch, barely noticeable, near where Sir Henry had fallen. Poirot crouched, examining the mark with a magnifying glass. "Curieux," he murmured. "This scratch, it is fresh, perhaps from a cufflink or a ring. We must ask if any guest's adornments bear such a mark." Japp jotted a note. "You think the killer nicked the railing while delivering the poison? That's a stretch, Poirot." "Not a stretch, mon ami, but a possibility. The smallest detail, it can unravel the grandest scheme." Poirot straightened, his eyes scanning the garden beyond, where a gardener pruned hedges with methodical care. The man's presence reminded him of the groundskeeper's testimony, Celeste and Grayson on the terrace, each with their own excuses. But had they acted alone or in concert? Poirot returned to the house, his mind turning to the scrap of paper found in Sir Henry's pocket. "Rotterdam," he said to Japp, producing the note. "It is a name, a place, a clue. Sir Henry's merger with the Dutch firm, it was no simple transaction. We must discover what lay beneath it." Japp nodded, dispatching a constable to telegraph inquiries to Rotterdam. "If there's dirt on Sir Henry's dealings, we'll find it, but I'm betting on Celeste or Grayson, or both. They were there, Poirot. Right where it happened." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Oui, Inspector, they were there. But presence is not proof. The murderer, they are clever, hiding their intent behind a veil of circumstance. Hercule Poirot, he will lift that veil." As he left the library, Poirot's thoughts returned to Madame Celeste. Her grace, her poise, were a performance as compelling as any on the stage, but every performer had their secrets. The handkerchief, the argument, the terrace, all pointed to her. Yet the pinprick suggested a hand more practiced in precision than passion. Was she a victim of circumstance or a player in a darker dance? The answer, Poirot knew, lay in the delicate balance of motive and opportunity, and he would not rest until he had uncovered it. Chapter 5. The Stranger's Shadow. The afternoon sun slanted through the tall windows of Ashbourne Hall, casting long, wavering shadows across the polished floors. The air was heavy with the scent of wax and worry, as the guests, confined to the estate by Inspector Japp's orders, moved like specters through the grand rooms. Hercule Poirot, his small frame erect and his eyes alight with purpose, navigated the corridors with the precision of a compass, his mind fixed on the enigmatic figure of Victor Grayson, the crimson-masked stranger, whose presence at the masquerade seemed less a coincidence than a calculated intrusion. Poirot found Grayson in the conservatory, a glass-domed haven where exotic ferns and orchids thrived in humid splendor. The man stood by a marble fountain, its gentle trickle a counterpoint to the tension that hung between them. Grayson's burgundy cloak was gone, replaced by a tailored suit of charcoal gray, but his demeanor retained the same guarded alertness Poirot had noted the previous night. His face, now unmasked, was lean and angular, with eyes that seemed to weigh every word before it was spoken. "Monsieur Grayson," Poirot began, his voice a velvet blade, "you are a man of mystery, non? A merchant, you claim, yet your bearing suggests a discipline not found in the counting-houses of London. Hercule Poirot wishes to understand your true purpose at this ball." Grayson's lips curved into a smile that held no warmth. "I've told you, Monsieur Poirot, I'm here on business. An associate of Lord Ashbourne invited me to discuss trade opportunities. Sir Henry Vaughan was one of many I spoke with last night. Our conversation was brief and unremarkable." He flicked a speck of dust from his sleeve, a gesture too casual to be natural. Poirot's mustache quivered, a sign of his mind's relentless churn. "Unremarkable, you say, yet a maid saw you near the terrace, adjusting your cloak moments before Sir Henry's death. And your crimson mask, monsieur, it was bold, designed to draw the eye. A strange choice for a man who claims to seek only trade." Grayson's eyes narrowed, but his voice remained steady. "The mask was a gift, chosen for its flair. As for the terrace, I stepped out for a cigarette, as I told the inspector. The night was warm, the ballroom crowded. I saw Sir Henry. Yes, but he was alive, arguing with Madame Celeste. I returned inside before anything happened." Poirot paced a slow circle around the fountain, his hands clasped behind his back. "A cigarette, oui, a convenient excuse. Yet your hands, monsieur, they are steady, precise. Hands that could wield a needle with the skill of a surgeon. The pinprick on Sir Henry's wrist, it suggests a method most deliberate. And you, a stranger, have no alibi save your own word. Grayson's smile faded, replaced by a flicker of irritation. You're fishing, Poirot. I had no quarrel with Sir Henry. Our talk was about shipping routes to the east, nothing worth killing over. If you're looking for a murderer, perhaps you should ask Madame Celeste about her little scene with him, or Lord Ashbourne, whose fortunes hung on Sir Henry's whims. Poirot's eyes gleamed, catching the deflection like a fencer parrying a thrust. You know much of Lord Ashbourne's fortunes, for a merchant newly arrived in London. Tell me, Monsieur Grayson, what is your interest in this merger with Rotterdam? The note in Sir Henry's pocket, it bore that name. A coincidence, perhaps. Grayson's expression hardened, but he answered smoothly. I know only what I've heard. Ashbourne's estate is faltering, and Sir Henry was his savior. Rotterdam was the key to their deal. If you think that note points to me, you're mistaken. I deal in goods, not secrets. Poirot nodded, his face a mask of courtesy. For now, I accept your words, monsieur. But the truth, it is like the water in this fountain. It flows, it reveals, even when one tries to still it. He turned to leave, then paused, glancing back. Your cufflinks, Monsieur Grayson, they are most striking. Might I examine them? Grayson hesitated, then extended his wrist. The cufflinks were silver, etched with a geometric pattern, their edges sharp but unmarred. Poirot studied them closely, noting no trace of damage or residue, yet filing the observation away. Merci, he said, and departed, his mind buzzing with the man's guarded responses. In the library, Poirot found Inspector Japp poring over a telegram from Rotterdam, his face creased with frustration. Nothing solid yet, Japp said, tossing the paper onto the table. The Dutch firm confirms a merger was in the works, but they're cagey about details. Sounds like Sir Henry was playing a dangerous game, rumors of under-the-table deals, maybe even smuggling. Poirot's eyes lit up. Smuggling, mon ami? This is most interesting. The note, Rotterdam, it suggests more than a simple merger. Sir Henry, he was a man of ambition, but also of secrets. We must learn what he sought to gain, and who sought to stop him. Japp grunted, flipping through his notebook. Grayson's story checks out, barely. His associate, a fellow named Carver, confirms the invitation, but Carver's a bit of a shady character himself. As for Grayson, he's got no record, but I've asked for a deeper check. Something about him smells off. Poirot nodded, his gaze drifting to a shelf of leather-bound books, their titles gleaming in the afternoon light. He is a man of discipline, Inspector, perhaps military, perhaps something more. Covert. His presence at the ball, it is no accident. We must watch him closely. Leaving Japp to his inquiries, Poirot returned to the terrace, where the daylight revealed details missed in the night's chaos. The scratch on the railing, noted earlier, was faint but distinct, as if a metal object had grazed it. He crouched, his magnifying glass catching the glint of sunlight, and considered the cufflinks of the suspects. Ashbourne's were ornate, with sharp edges. Celeste's jewelry was delicate, impractical for such a task. Grayson's were precise, but unblemished. The scratch could be nothing, or everything. A maid, clearing a tray of glasses nearby, paused at Poirot's request. "Mademoiselle," he said, his tone disarming. "You saw Monsieur Grayson on the terrace, oui? Can you recall anything unusual? His manner? His actions? The maid, a nervous girl with wide eyes, fidgeted with her apron. He was odd, sir. Kept to himself, like he was watching everyone. I saw him adjust his cloak near the railing, just before the scream. His hands moved quick, like he was hiding something, but I didn't see what. Poirot's mustache twitched. Most helpful, mademoiselle. And did you see Madame Celeste or Lord Ashbourne there? Madame Celeste. Yes, sir. She was out there a moment before, looking cross. Lord Ashbourne, I didn't see, but he was at the entrance most of the night, shouting greetings like always. Thanking her, Poirot walked the garden path, his mind piecing together the timeline. Grayson's presence on the terrace, his quick hands, his vague alibi, all pointed to opportunity. But motive? If Grayson was no mere merchant, what stake did he have in Sir Henry's death? The Rotterdam connection hinted at international intrigue, a game larger than Ashbourne's failing estate. Poirot recalled Grayson's steady hands, his cool demeanor, qualities of a man trained to act without hesitation. In the drawing room, Poirot encountered Lord Ashbourne, who was pacing, his face a map of worry. "Monsieur Poirot," Ashbourne said, his voice strained. This nightmare, it will ruin me. The merger is dead without Sir Henry. Have you found anything?" Poirot's gaze was steady. "We have found much, my lord, but understood little. Tell me, did Sir Henry ever mention a man named Grayson in connection with your deal?" Ashbourne frowned, shaking his head. "No, never. Grayson was a guest of Carver's, a last-minute addition. I barely spoke to him. Why?" Poirot waved a hand, dismissing the question with a smile. "A thread, nothing more. But every thread, it leads to the truth." As he left Ashbourne, Poirot's thoughts turned to the pinprick, the vial, the Rotterdam note. Grayson's military bearing suggested a man capable of the murder's precision, but the vial's placement was theatrical, a flourish that seemed at odds with his restraint. Was Grayson the killer, or a pawn in a larger scheme? The answer, Poirot knew, lay in the shadows of motive, where the crimson mask concealed more than a face. It hid a purpose. Chapter 6. The Puzzle of the Poison. The late afternoon light filtered through the library windows of Ashbourne Hall, casting a golden glow over rows of leather-bound books, their spines gleaming like silent sentinels. The grandeur of the estate felt stifled, the air thick with the unspoken fears of its occupants, each confined by the invisible chains of suspicion. Hercule Poirot stood at the center of the room, his small stature belying the towering intellect that churned beneath his polished exterior. Inspector Japp, his notebook worn from constant use, leaned against a table littered with evidence reports, his face etched with the frustration of a man grappling with a puzzle that refused to yield. "Poirot," Japp said, his voice rough with fatigue. "This case is like trying to catch smoke. We've got the vial, the pinprick, the handkerchief, and that blasted Rotterdam note, but nothing ties together. The poison was cyanide, no doubt, but how it got into Sir Henry's blood without a trace on his glass or food, it's beyond me." Poirot's mustache twitched, a subtle signal of his mind's relentless activity. "Non, mon ami. It is not beyond Hercule Poirot. The poison, it was delivered with precision, a method so subtle it leaves only whispers. The pinprick on Sir Henry's wrist, it is the key. The vial, with its trace of cyanide, is a distraction, a piece of theater to mislead us." He paced, his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes darting as if tracing an invisible map. We must consider how the cyanide reached the blood, and who among our suspects had the skill to deliver it. Jap rubbed his chin, his eyes narrowing. A needle, you said, but who'd get close enough to jab him without a fuss? Sir Henry wasn't the type to stand still for a prick like that. Poirot's gaze sharpened. Exactement, Inspector. The act was swift, intimate, disguised as a casual touch, a handshake, perhaps, or a brush of the arm. The needle, it could be concealed in a ring, a cufflink, even a glove. We must examine the adornments of our suspects with care. Jap flipped through his notebook, his brow furrowing. We checked Grayson's cufflinks, silver, sharp-edged but clean. Ashbourne's are fancier, gold with some filigree, but nothing suspicious. Madame Celeste had a bracelet, delicate thing, no place for a needle. And the guests' statements, most of them say Sir Henry was alone on the terrace before. He collapsed, except for Celeste and Grayson nearby. Poirot nodded, his mind sifting through the details like a jeweler sorting gems. The terrace, it is the stage of this crime, but the act began earlier. Let us review the timeline. Sir Henry argued with Madame Celeste in the ballroom, then followed her to the terrace. Monsieur Grayson, he was seen there moments later, adjusting his cloak. The scream came shortly after, and Sir Henry was found, his lips purple, his wrist marked. The vial, it was placed in his pocket. By whom and why? Jap shrugged, tossing a report onto the table. The coroner's sure about the cyanide, says it was a high dose, straight to the bloodstream, no burns in the mouth, no residue in the stomach. Rules out food or drink, which fits your needle theory. But that vial, it's got just enough cyanide to look guilty, not enough to kill. A plant, you think? Oui, Poirot said, his voice low. A clever ruse to make us think Sir Henry poisoned himself, or to point to another. But the pinprick, it tells the truth. The murderer, they are bold, but not reckless. They chose a method that required proximity, yet left no trace save that tiny mark. Jap's eyes lit up. Proximity, eh? That puts Celeste and Grayson in the frame again. Celeste was arguing with him, maybe close enough to slip in a needle. Grayson, with his cool head, could have done it in a second and walked away. Poirot raised a hand, his expression cautionary. We must not leap, mon ami. Madame Celeste, her hands are those of a dancer, not a poisoner. And Grayson, his composure is that of a man trained to act without error, but his motive remains elusive. We must also consider Lord Ashbourne. His alibi is strong, yet his desperation, it is a shadow that follows him. Jap snorted. Ashbourne's got motive up to his eyeballs. Sir Henry's death kills his merger. But he was at the entrance, waving at guests like a ruddy peacock. No way he slipped out to the terrace without someone noticing. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. The alibi, it is like a fine suit. It fits well, but may hide flaws. We must test it, as we must test all things. He paused, his gaze drifting to the Rotterdam note, now resting among Jap's papers. This word, Rotterdam, it is a thread that binds Sir Henry to his killer. Was it the merger, or something darker, a deal that threatened more than Ashbourne's fortune? Jap dispatched a constable to fetch the coroner's full report, then turned to Poirot. I've got men digging into Grayson's background. No record yet, but he's too slick for a merchant. And Celeste, her story's holding, but that handkerchief bothers me. Why was it there, stained with claret? Poirot's eyes gleamed. The handkerchief, it is a clue, but not as we first thought. The stain, it is wine, yes, but its presence on the terrace suggests carelessness or intent. Was it dropped by Madame Celeste in her haste or placed to implicate her? We must speak with her again. But first, I wish to see Sir Henry's body once more. They moved to the side room, serving as a makeshift morgue, where Dr. Hargrove was concluding his examination. The body lay under a sheet, its peacock mask long removed, revealing Sir Henry's face, frozen in a grimace of agony. Poirot leaned close, his magnifying glass tracing the pinprick on the wrist. The mark was minute, surrounded by a faint bruise, as if the needle had been driven with force but precision. "This," Poirot said, "is the work of a steady hand. The cyanide, it entered the blood directly, causing death in moments. But the vial, it was empty, a prop to confuse us." Hargrove nodded, his voice clinical. "The dose was lethal, no question. Cyanide in the blood acts fast. Convulsions, collapse, death. The vial's residue matches, but it's too small to have held enough. Someone wanted us to find it." Poirot's mind raced, piecing together the mechanics of the crime. The needle suggested a personal encounter, a moment of trust or distraction. Sir Henry, a man of charisma and arrogance, would not suspect a fatal touch in the midst of a crowd. But who could approach him so closely? Celeste, with her heated exchange, Grayson, with his fleeting presence, or Ashbourne, whose alibi, though robust, might conceal a clever ruse. Returning to the library, Poirot requested a list of the guests' jewelry and accessories, a task Japp assigned to a diligent constable. "We must look for a ring, a cufflink, something sharp enough to conceal a needle," Poirot said. "The scratch on the terrace railing, it may be the mark of such a device." Japp raised an eyebrow. "You're thinking the killer nicked the railing while making their move? That's a fine detail, Poirot." "The finest details, Inspector. They are the ones that betray the guilty," Poirot replied, his voice soft but resolute. He turned to the Rotterdam note, its single word a taunt to his intellect. "We must learn more of this deal. Sir Henry, he was not merely a financier. His ambitions, they reached beyond the counting-house. Smuggling, perhaps, as you suggested, or something more. Political." Japp's face darkened. "Political? You're thinking espionage?" Grayson's got that look about him. Too calm, too controlled. Could he be some kind of agent? Poirot's smile was faint. "A possibility, mon ami, but we must not assume. The truth, it is like a mosaic. Each piece must fit perfectly. We will speak with Monsieur Grayson again, and Madame Celeste, and we will test Lord Ashbourne's alibi with the rigor it demands." As they prepared to summon the suspects, a constable arrived with a preliminary report on the guests' accessories. Ashbourne's cufflinks were gold, ornate, with sharp edges that could conceal a mechanism. Grayson's were silver, unblemished but precise. Celeste's bracelet was delicate, ornamental, unlikely to hide a needle. Poirot filed the information away, his mind turning to the terrace, the moment of death, the fleeting touch that ended a life. The library clock chimed, its notes a reminder of time's relentless march. Poirot stood, his eyes alight with determination. "The puzzle of the poison. It is complex, Inspector, but not insoluble. The murderer, they have played their hand with skill, but they have left traces, a pinprick, a note, a scratch. Hercule Poirot will follow these traces to the truth, and the truth it will not hide forever." Chapter 7. The Web of Motives. The evening shadows lengthened across Ashbourne Hall, cloaking its grand halls in a somber twilight that mirrored the growing tension within. The air was thick with the scent of polished wood and fading roses, a reminder of the masquerade's fleeting splendor, now overshadowed by murder. Hercule Poirot, his compact figure a beacon of calm amid the storm, had requested the principal suspects, Lord Ashbourne, Madame Celeste Dubois, and Victor Grayson, be gathered in the drawing-room. The room, with its velvet drapes and flickering hearth, was a stage for revelation, and Poirot intended to direct the scene with his characteristic precision. The suspects entered, each a study in guarded unease. Lord Ashbourne, his silver hair disheveled, clutched a tumbler of brandy, his ruddy face etched with the strain of a man whose empire teetered on collapse. Madame Celeste, her dancer's grace undiminished, sat with her hands folded tightly in her lap, her dark eyes darting between her companions. Victor Grayson stood apart, his lean frame silhouetted against a window, his expression as inscrutable as the crimson mask he had worn the previous night. The firelight cast their shadows on the walls, wavering like specters of their secrets. Poirot stood before them, his hands clasped behind his back, his mustache a perfect curve of authority. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice a soft but commanding thread in the silence. "The death of Sir Henry Vaughan is no mere tragedy. It is a murder most cunning, executed with a needle's precision and cloaked in deception. The pinprick on his wrist, the vial in his pocket, the note marked Rotterdam. These are the threads of a web, and you, each of you, are entangled within it. Hercule Poirot seeks the truth, and the truth, it will be found." Ashbourne shifted, his glass clinking against the arm of his chair. "This is absurd, Poirot," he said, his voice rough with indignation. "I was at the ballroom entrance, greeting guests. I had no cause to harm Sir Henry. He was my salvation, not my enemy." Poirot's gaze was unyielding. "Your salvation? Oui, but at what cost, my lord? The merger with Rotterdam, it was to save your estate. Yet Sir Henry, he held power over you. Did he demand more than you could give? Secrets, perhaps, or silence?" Ashbourne's face flushed, his fingers tightening around the glass. "He demanded nothing I couldn't manage. A share of profits, influence, business, nothing more. His death ruins me, Poirot. Why would I kill the man who could save me?" Poirot's eyes flickered to Madame Celeste, whose composure wavered under his scrutiny. "And you, madame," he said, his tone gentle but probing. "Your encounter with Sir Henry was not so amicable. An argument, witnessed by many, followed by your presence on the terrace. Your handkerchief, stained with claret, was found near the body. Tell me, what passed between you that drove you to seek the night air?" Celeste's lips parted, her voice steady but laced with strain. "I have told you, Monsieur Poirot. Sir Henry sought my favor, offering patronage in exchange for intimacy. I refused him, and he grew angry. I went to the terrace to escape his words, nothing more. My handkerchief, I must have dropped it in my haste. I was dancing when he died, as dozens can confirm." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "Your dance, it was exquisite, madame, a performance that held every eye. Yet the terrace, it was a place of danger that night. The pinprick, it suggests a touch, a moment of closeness. Could Sir Henry have pressed too close, and you, in a moment of desperation?" Her eyes flashed, her hands clenching. "I am no killer, monsieur. My art is my life, not death. I had no needle, no poison. I swear it." Poirot turned to Grayson, whose stillness was like a coiled spring. "And you, Monsieur Grayson, the stranger in the crimson mask, You claim to be a merchant, yet your manner speaks of discipline, perhaps of secrets. You were on the terrace, adjusting your cloak, moments before Sir Henry's fall. Your hands, they are steady, capable of delivering a fatal prick. What was your business with Sir Henry? Grayson's smile was thin, his eyes cold. I've said it before, Poirot. We spoke of trade routes, nothing more. I stepped out for a cigarette, saw him arguing with Madame Celeste, and returned inside. I had no reason to harm him. Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of his relentless scrutiny. No reason, you say, yet your presence here is no accident. The note, Rotterdam, it points to a deal beyond Lord Ashbourne's merger. Sir Henry, he was involved in matters of great consequence, non? Matters that might interest a man of your talents. Grayson's jaw tightened, but he remained silent, his gaze locked on Poirot's. The room grew heavy, the fires crackled, the only sound breaking the tension. Poirot paced, his steps measured, his voice a quiet force. The murderer is among us, mes amis. They are clever, weaving a web of misdirection, the vial to suggest a poison taken, the handkerchief to point to Madame Celeste, the note to hint at a larger game. But the pinprick, it is the truth, a silent confession of a hand that struck with precision. He paused, his eyes sweeping the trio. Ashbourne's flush deepened, Celeste's hands trembled, Grayson's composure held like a fortress. Poirot continued. Lord Ashbourne, your estate hung in the balance, and Sir Henry held the key. Madame Celeste, your rejection of his advances threatened your career, for he was a man of influence. Monsieur Grayson, your purpose remains shadowed, but your presence on the terrace cannot be ignored. Each of you had motive, each had opportunity. Ashbourne slammed his glass down, the sound sharp. This is nonsense. I was nowhere near the terrace. My staff, my guests, they'll vouch for me. Celeste's voice was soft but firm. I danced, Monsieur Poirot. I could not have been there when he died. Grayson's tone was cool. You're chasing shadows, Poirot. Look to the others. My business was with trade, not murder. Poirot's smile was faint, his eyes alight with purpose. Shadows. Oui, but shadows cast by light. The truth, it is near, and Hercule Poirot will find it. He turned to Japp, who had entered quietly, his notebook clutched like a lifeline. Inspector, have we news of the Rotterdam inquiry? Japp nodded, his face grim. Just got a wire. The Dutch firm's cagey, but there's talk of Sir Henry brokering more than a merger. Arms deals, maybe, or sensitive documents. Rotterdam's a hub for that sort of thing. Could be why someone wanted him out of the picture. Poirot's gray cells sparked, the word Rotterdam now a beacon in the fog. Arms, documents, these are motives that reach beyond this room. Monsieur Grayson, your trade routes, they would not involve such matters, would they? Grayson's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing, his silence a wall Poirot could not yet breach. The detective turned to the table where the evidence lay. The vial, the handkerchief, the Rotterdam note. A new item caught his eye. A small key found in Sir Henry's cigarette case, overlooked in the initial search. Its shape was unusual, ornate, suggesting a lock of importance. This key, Poirot said, holding it up, it is another thread. To what does it belong? A safe? A box? A secret? Japp shrugged. Could be anything. We'll search his rooms, see if it fits anything here. Poirot nodded, his mind racing. The key, like the note, hinted at Sir Henry's hidden dealings. Had he been a player in a game of international stakes, and had Grayson, with his cryptic presence, been sent to stop him? Or was Ashbourne's desperation a mask for a deeper betrayal? Celeste's role, too, remained unclear. Her rejection of Sir Henry could hide a motive more complex than pride. As the suspects were dismissed, Poirot lingered by the fire, its warmth a contrast to the chill of his thoughts. The web of motives was intricate, each suspect a strand pulling in a different direction. Ashbourne's financial ruin, Celeste's threatened career, Grayson's shadowed purpose, all were plausible, yet none complete. The pinprick, the vial, the key, the note. These were the pieces of a puzzle only Poirot's genius could assemble. He resolved to probe deeper, to test each alibi and motive until the web unraveled, revealing the spider at its heart. Chapter 8. The Spy's Gambit. The twilight deepened over Ashbourne Hall, its spires silhouetted against a sky bruised with the last hues of dusk. Within, the air was taut, as if the very walls held their breath, awaiting the next revelation in the grim drama of Sir Henry Vaughan's murder. Hercule Poirot, his meticulous mind a whirl of connections, sought out Victor Grayson once more, drawn by the enigma of the crimson-masked stranger, whose cool demeanor masked a purpose Poirot was determined to uncover. The conservatory, with its glass dome and whispering ferns, was the chosen stage for this encounter, its isolation offering a space for truths to surface, or be deftly concealed. Grayson stood by a trellis of blooming jasmine, the moonlight filtering through the glass to cast dappled shadows across his lean features. His charcoal suit was immaculate, but his eyes, sharp and unyielding, betrayed a vigilance that spoke of more than a merchant's concerns. Poirot approached, his steps deliberate, his voice a velvet thread woven with intent. "Monsieur Grayson," he began, his accent lending a musical cadence to the silence, "you have been most elusive, non? A merchant, you claim, yet your presence at this ball, your proximity to Sir Henry's death, they suggest a role far grander. Hercule Poirot wishes to know, what game do you play?" Grayson's lips twitched, a flicker of amusement that did not reach his eyes. "No game, Monsieur Poirot. I am what I say, a man of trade, invited by a business associate. Sir Henry was a contact, not a target. You're building castles in the air with your suspicions." Poirot's mustache quivered, a sign of his relentless scrutiny. "Castles, perhaps, but built on the foundation of fact. You were seen on the terrace, monsieur, moments before Sir Henry's collapse, your hands busy with your cloak. A maid noted your quick movements, as if concealing something, and the pinprick on Sir Henry's wrist, a mark of precision delivered by a hand such as yours, trained, disciplined, perhaps military." Grayson's posture stiffened, a subtle shift that Poirot marked with interest. "You're perceptive, Poirot," he said, his voice low and measured. "I've served, yes, years ago, but that's no crime. As for the terrace, I told you. I stepped out for a cigarette. Sir Henry was alive, arguing with Madame Celeste when I left him. If you seek a killer, look to her passion or Lord Ashbourne's desperation." Poirot paced a slow arc, his polished shoes silent on the stone floor. "A cigarette, oui, a convenient tale. Yet the pinprick, it speaks of a method not born of passion, but of calculation. The vial in Sir Henry's pocket, it was a distraction, placed to mislead. You, monsieur, with your steady hands and shadowed purpose, could wield such a needle, hidden perhaps in a cufflink or a ring." Grayson's eyes narrowed, but he extended his wrist, the same silver cufflinks gleaming under the moonlight. "Examine them again, Poirot. You'll find nothing, no needle, no poison. Your theory is clever, but it lacks proof." Poirot studied the cufflinks, their geometric etchings unmarred, yet his mind lingered on the scratch on the terrace railing, a faint clue that whispered of contact. "Proof, monsieur. It comes in time. But let us speak of Rotterdam. The note in Sir Henry's pocket, it points to a deal beyond Lord Ashbourne's merger. You, with your talk of trade routes, would know of such matters, none? Perhaps a deal in arms or secrets that could not be allowed to proceed." For the first time, Grayson's composure wavered, a fleeting crack in his facade. "Rotterdam is a port, nothing more," he said, his tone clipped. "Sir Henry was ambitious, reckless even. If he dabbled in dangerous deals, that's no concern of mine." Poirot's smile was faint, his eyes piercing. "Reckless, oui? And such recklessness draws enemies. Tell me, Monsieur Grayson, are you merely a merchant or a guardian of larger interests? A man sent to watch, to act when the stakes are high?" Grayson's silence was answer enough, a wall of restraint that Poirot could not yet breach. The detective changed tack, his voice softening. "Your associate, this Monsieur Carver, he vouches for you, yet his own reputation is clouded. Why did he bring you to Ashbourne Hall?" "To network," Grayson replied, his tone regaining its smoothness. "Carver deals in imports, like me. He thought Sir Henry's connections could open doors, that's all." Poirot nodded, filing the response away. "For now, I thank you, monsieur. But the truth, it is like the jasmine you stand beside. It blooms in the dark, and its scent cannot be hidden." Leaving the conservatory, Poirot's thoughts churned. Grayson's military past, hinted at but not confirmed, suggested a man capable of the murder's precision. The pinprick required a steady hand, a moment of distraction, and Grayson's terrace presence placed him at the scene. Yet his motive remained elusive, tied perhaps to the Rotterdam note and whispers of illicit dealings. Poirot resolved to press Inspector Japp for more on Grayson's background, suspecting a connection to espionage that could illuminate the crime. In the library, Japp was hunched over a fresh telegram, his face a map of frustration. "Rotterdam's a mess," he grumbled, tossing the paper to Poirot. "The Dutch firm's tight-lipped, but there's chatter about Sir Henry negotiating with foreign agents. Arms, maybe, or documents. Nothing solid, but it's enough to make you wonder what he was into." Poirot's eyes gleamed as he read the telegram. Arms, documents, these are motives that reach beyond Ashbourne's estate. Sir Henry, he played a dangerous game, and someone, perhaps Monsieur Grayson, sought to end it. "Have you news of his background?" Japp nodded, flipping through his notebook. "Got a wire from my contacts. Grayson's no merchant, or not just one. Served in the army, intelligence work, before vanishing into private trade. No record of trouble, but he's got the look of a man who knows more than he says." "Intelligence," Poirot murmured, his gray cells sparking. "A spy, perhaps, tasked with monitoring Sir Henry. If the Rotterdam deal was treasonous, Grayson would have reason to act. But the vial, the handkerchief, these are theatrical, not the work of a trained agent." Japp scratched his chin. "Unless he wanted to throw us off, plant the vial, drop the handkerchief, make it look like Celeste or Ashbourne." Poirot's smile was grim. "A possibility, mon ami, but we must also consider the key found in Sir Henry's cigarette case. It is ornate, specific. We must search his rooms, find what it unlocks. A safe, a box, a secret that drove someone to kill." Japp dispatched a constable to search Sir Henry's guest suite, while Poirot returned to the terrace, drawn by its role as the crime's silent witness. The scratch on the railing, faint but telling, suggested a moment of contact, a cufflink, a ring, grazing the metal in the act of murder. Grayson's cufflinks were clean, but Poirot recalled their sharp edges, capable of concealing a mechanism. He knelt, his magnifying glass tracing the mark, his mind reconstructing the fatal moment. A handshake, a touch, a needle's prick, swift, silent, deadly. A gardener tending nearby shrubs paused at Poirot's beckoning. "Monsieur," Poirot said, his tone disarming, "you saw the terrace last night. Did Monsieur Grayson, the man in the crimson mask, do anything unusual, perhaps touch Sir Henry, or linger near him?" The gardener, a wiry man with weathered hands, squinted in thought. "Saw him, aye, sir. He was by the railing, fiddling with his cloak, like he was nervous. Didn't see him touch the gentleman, but he was close, talking low. Then the lady, the dancer, she was there too, looking cross. Didn't stay long, neither of 'em." Poirot thanked him, his mind weaving the gardener's words into the tapestry of evidence. Grayson's proximity, his quick hands, aligned with the pinprick's precision, but the vial's theatricality gnawed at him. A spy would be subtle, not flamboyant, unless the flamboyance was itself a mask designed to shift blame. Returning to the drawing room, Poirot found Japp with news from the search. "Found a locked box in Sir Henry's room," Japp said, holding up the ornate key. "This fits it, but the box is empty. Looks like someone got there first." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Empty, you say? Then the secret it held was taken, perhaps by the killer. We must learn what it contained. Papers, perhaps, tied to Rotterdam. Monsieur Grayson, he knows more than he admits." As night fell, Poirot stood alone in the conservatory, the jasmine scent a reminder of Grayson's guarded words. The spy's gambit was clear, to deflect, to obscure, but Poirot's genius lay in seeing through such ploys. The pinprick, the key, the Rotterdam note, these were the pieces of a puzzle nearing completion, and Poirot would not rest until he had cornered the player at its heart. Chapter 9. The Dancer's Secret. The night had settled over Ashbourne Hall like a velvet curtain, its darkness pierced only by the flicker of gas lamps and the distant glow of stars. Within the grand estate, the atmosphere was heavy with suspicion, each guest a shadow moving through a labyrinth of secrets. Hercule Poirot, his mind a beacon of clarity amid the murk, sought out Madame Celeste Dubois once more, drawn by the enigma of her grace and the nagging inconsistencies in her tale. The guest suite where she resided was a sanctuary of soft light and delicate fabrics, yet it could not shield her from the piercing gaze of the Belgian detective. Celeste stood by a lacquered dressing table, her dove gray dress replaced by a silk robe of midnight blue, its folds accentuating her dancer's poise. Her dark hair, unbound, cascaded over her shoulders, and her eyes, luminous as ever, met Poirot's with a mixture of weariness and defiance. The silver mask from the Masquerade lay beside a vase of lilies, its filigree catching the lamplight like a whispered challenge. Poirot, his hands clasped behind his back, surveyed the room with the precision of an artist studying a canvas, noting every detail. The faint scent of perfume, the open window letting in the night's chill, the subtle tremor in Celeste's fingers as she adjusted her robe. "Madame Dubois," Poirot began, his voice a gentle but relentless probe. "You have been most forthcoming, yet the truth, it is like your dance, beautiful, but elusive. Hercule Poirot seeks to understand your role in the tragedy of Sir Henry Vaughan, your presence on the terrace, your argument with him, the handkerchief stained with claret. These are threads that bind you to the crime. Will you share the secret you guard so closely?" Celeste's lips parted, her breath catching like a note held too long. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her French accent a melody tinged with strain. "I have told you all I know. Sir Henry was insistent, offering patronage for favors I would not grant. I refused him, and he was angry. I sought air on the terrace to escape his words. My handkerchief, I must have dropped it. I was dancing when he died. Many saw me. What more can I say?" Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of his mind's ceaseless activity. "What more, madame? Perhaps the truth behind your agitation. Your argument with Sir Henry, it was not merely a refusal, no? A man of his influence could threaten more than your pride. Did he hold power over your career, your future?" Celeste's eyes flickered, a shadow passing over them like a cloud across the moon. She turned to the window, her fingers tracing the sill as if seeking an anchor. He spoke of my performances," she admitted, her voice low. "He said he could ensure my success in London, open doors to the grandest theaters, but his price was clear. My honor, my dignity. I told him no, and he threatened to ruin me, to spread whispers that would close those doors forever." Poirot's gaze softened, but his scrutiny remained unrelenting. "A threat, oui, and a potent one. Your career, it is your life, madame. To protect it, might you have acted in desperation? The pinprick on Sir Henry's wrist, it suggests a method precise, intimate. Your hands, they are skilled in the art of grace. Could they wield a needle?" Her head snapped up, her eyes blazing. "You accuse me, monsieur? My hands create beauty, not death. I know nothing of needles or poison. I left him on the terrace, alive, and returned to dance. I am no murderer." Her voice trembled, but her posture remained erect, a dancer's discipline holding her together. Poirot paced slowly, his polished shoes silent on the thick carpet. "I accuse no one, madame. I observe. And what I observe is a woman caught in a delicate balance. Your handkerchief, found near the body, suggests carelessness or design. The terrace, it was a place of confrontation, yet you claim only a moment's escape. Tell me, did you see Monsieur Grayson there or Lord Ashbourne?" Celeste hesitated, her fingers tightening on the sill. "I saw Monsieur Grayson, yes, near the railing. He was adjusting his cloak, looking watchful. I did not see Lord Ashbourne. I was there only briefly before returning to the ballroom." Poirot's eyes narrowed, catching the hesitation. "And Sir Henry? He was alone when you left him? No one approached? No touch was exchanged?" "No," she said firmly. "He was angry, pacing, but alive. I did not touch him, Monsieur Poirot. I swear it." Poirot nodded, his expression enigmatic. "Merci, madame. For now, I will leave you to your reflections. But the truth, it is like the lilies on your table. Its beauty cannot remain hidden." Leaving the suite, Poirot's mind churned with the nuances of Celeste's words. Her story held, supported by the witnesses who saw her dance, yet the handkerchief and her terrace presence were damning. The pinprick required a precision she seemed unlikely to possess, yet her motive, protecting her career from Sir Henry's threats, was compelling. Her mention of Grayson, watchful by the railing, aligned with other accounts, but did it confirm his guilt or deflect from her own? In the corridor, Poirot encountered Inspector Japp, his face flushed from a heated exchange with a constable. "Poirot," Japp said, waving a fresh report. "We've got something from Sir Henry's box. The key fit, but it was empty like I said. But we found a hidden compartment. Empty, too, but it had traces of paper, like someone burned documents recently. Poirot's gray cells sparked. Burned documents, mon ami? This is most significant. Sir Henry, he guarded secrets, perhaps tied to Rotterdam. The key, the empty box, they suggest the killer took what he valued most. We must learn what those papers contained. Japp nodded, scribbling in his notebook. I've got men checking the fireplaces for ash. And Grayson, my contacts confirm he was in intelligence, left under a cloud a few years back. No details, but he's no stranger to dirty work. Could be our man. Poirot's smile was grim. A spy, oui, and one who plays a careful game. But Madame Celeste, her secret is not yet fully revealed. Her perfume, I noted in her room, a rare blend with a bitter note, like almonds. It is curious, non? Cyanide. It has a similar scent. Could it be a coincidence or a clue? Japp's eyes widened. You think she's hiding poison in her perfume? That's a stretch, Poirot. Not hiding, perhaps, but masking, Poirot replied. The scent, it lingers in the mind, like a false trail. We must test her perfume, but discreetly. And we must revisit her movements. She claims she danced, yet the footman saw her on the terrace longer than she admits. They moved to the ballroom, now empty save for a few constables cataloging evidence. Poirot stood where Celeste had performed her solo waltz, picturing her graceful figure captivating the crowd. The timing was tight. Her dance began moments after the scream, suggesting she returned from the terrace just in time. But could she have delivered the fatal prick and rejoined the revelry so seamlessly? A maid, polishing a candelabra nearby, paused at Poirot's gentle inquiry. "Mademoiselle," he said, "you saw Madame Celeste's dance, oui? Did she seem breathless, hurried, as if she had just returned from elsewhere?" The maid frowned, her cloth slowing. "She was a vision, sir, like always, but yes, she seemed a bit flushed, like she'd rushed in. I thought it was the dance, but now you mention it, she was adjusting her shawl, like she'd just thrown it on." Poirot thanked her, his mind weaving the maid's words into the tapestry of evidence. Celeste's haste, her flushed demeanor, suggested a swift return from the terrace, but the pinprick's precision pointed elsewhere. Her perfume, with its almond-like note, was a tantalizing clue, yet without evidence of cyanide, it remained a shadow of suspicion. Returning to Japp, Poirot shared his findings. "Madame Celeste, she is a woman of secrets, Inspector, but not necessarily of murder. The pinprick, it requires a hand trained for such work. Grayson, perhaps, with his intelligence background. Yet her motive, it is strong, and her presence on the terrace cannot be ignored." Japp scratched his head. "We're circling, Poirot. Grayson, Celeste, Ashbourne, all with reasons, all with chances. But that needle, it's got to be someone who could get close without Sir Henry blinking." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Exactement, mon ami. The killer, they are bold, yet invisible, hiding behind a moment of trust. The perfume, the handkerchief, the empty box. These are pieces of a puzzle that grows clearer. We must press on. For the dancer's secret, it is but one step toward the truth." As he left the ballroom, Poirot's thoughts turned to the Rotterdam note, the burned papers, the key. Celeste's grace was a mask, but whether it concealed guilt or fear, he could not yet say. The truth, he knew, was near, waiting to be unveiled by the relentless logic of Hercule Poirot. Chapter 10. The Host's Desperation. The night had deepened into a velvet abyss, cloaking Ashbourne Hall in a silence broken only by the occasional creak of its ancient timbers. The grandeur of the estate, once a beacon of opulence, now felt like a mausoleum, its walls echoing the weight of Sir Henry Vaughan's murder. Hercule Poirot, his mind a furnace of deduction, sought out Lord Reginald Ashbourne for a final probing, driven by the conviction that the host's polished exterior concealed a truth as fragile as the crystal chandeliers above. The study, with its oak-paneled walls and ancestral portraits, was a fitting arena for this confrontation, its air heavy with the scent of old leather and unspoken fears. Lord Ashbourne stood by the fireplace, the flames casting flickering shadows across his haggard face. His silver hair, once a mark of distinction, hung limp, and his eyes, bloodshot from sleeplessness, betrayed a man teetering on the edge of ruin. The brandy decanter on his desk was nearly empty, its contents a poor shield against the storm of suspicion. Poirot entered quietly, his small frame radiating an authority that filled the room. He closed the door with a deliberate click, ensuring privacy for the truths he sought to unearth. "My lord," Poirot began, his voice a soft but unrelenting force, "you have borne the weight of this tragedy with the dignity of your station. Yet Hercule Poirot sees the cracks in your composure. The death of Sir Henry Vaughan, it is not merely a loss, it is a blow to your very existence, no? The merger with Rotterdam, it was your salvation, and now it is dust. Tell me, what drove you to such desperation?" Ashbourne's hand trembled as he set down his glass, the clink against the desk, a sharp note in the quiet. "You've seen my books, Poirot," he said, his voice hoarse with strain. "The estate's been bleeding for years. Debts, bad investments, the lot. Sir Henry's deal was my last hope. Without it, I'm finished. Ashbourne Hall, my family's legacy, gone." He sank into his chair, his robust frame deflated. "But I didn't kill him. I was at the ballroom entrance, greeting guests, my staff, my guests. They'll swear to it." Poirot's mustache quivered, a sign of his mind's relentless churn. "Your alibi, it is robust, oui, but alibis, they can be crafted as carefully as a suit. You spoke with Sir Henry earlier, near the refreshment table. Your voices low, your postures tense. What passed between you that left you so shaken?" Ashbourne's eyes darted to the fire, seeking refuge in its glow. He pressed me," he admitted, his words slow, as if pried from a locked vault. "The merger wasn't just capital. It came with conditions. He wanted control, a majority stake in my board, and he knew things about my finances, my past dealings. He hinted at exposure if I didn't comply." Poirot's gaze sharpened, his gray cells sparking. "Exposure, you say? Secrets that could ruin more than your estate, perhaps? Sir Henry, he was a man who traded in power, non? What did he know that made you fear him?" Ashbourne's face paled, his fingers drumming a nervous rhythm on the desk. "Nothing criminal," he said quickly. "Debts, yes, and some unwise investments abroad. He threatened to make them public, to paint me as a fool or worse. But I swear, Poirot, I didn't touch him. I was at the entrance when he died." Poirot paced, his polished shoes silent on the thick rug. "And yet, my lord, a servant recalls you stepping away briefly to fetch a guest's cloak. A moment, perhaps, long enough to slip to the terrace? The pinprick on Sir Henry's wrist, it required only a second, a touch disguised as courtesy." Ashbourne's head snapped up, his eyes blazing. "You accuse me, Poirot? I was back in moments. Ask Hawkins, the butler. I never went near the terrace. And a needle? I'm no chemist, no assassin." Poirot's smile was enigmatic, his eyes unwavering. "I accuse no one, my lord. I probe. The pinprick, It is the work of a steady hand, but the vial in Sir Henry's pocket, it is a flourish of misdirection. Your cufflinks, they are ornate, with sharp edges. Might they conceal a mechanism? Ashbourne extended his wrists, the gold cufflinks gleaming in the firelight. "Look for yourself," he said, his voice thick with defiance. "They're heirlooms, nothing more. No needles, no poison." Poirot examined them closely, noting their intricate filigree, their weight, the sharpness of their edges. No visible mechanism, but the possibility lingered, a shadow in his mind. "Merci," he said, stepping back. "And the key found in Sir Henry's cigarette case, do you know what it unlocked?" Ashbourne frowned, shaking his head. "No idea. He never mentioned a key. A safe, maybe?" He was secretive, always carrying papers, whispering about deals. Poirot's gray cells hummed. The key, the empty box with its burned compartment, the Rotterdam note. These were fragments of a larger truth. Ashbourne's desperation was palpable, his motive clear, but his alibi, supported by multiple witnesses, held firm. Yet the servant's mention of his brief absence gnawed at Poirot, a crack in the facade that demanded scrutiny. Leaving the study, Poirot sought out Inspector Japp in the library, where the air was thick with the scent of paper and ink. Japp was sorting through a pile of telegrams, his face creased with exasperation. "Poirot," he said, waving a sheet, "we've got more on Rotterdam. The firm's linked to a shady outfit, arms smuggling, maybe worse. Sir Henry was in deep, negotiating with foreign agents. Could be why someone wanted him dead." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Arms smuggling, mon ami. This elevates the stakes. The note, the key, the empty box. These suggest Sir Henry held secrets worth killing for. And Lord Ashbourne, he admits Sir Henry knew of his financial missteps. Could he have acted to silence him?" Japp scratched his chin. "His alibi's tight. Hawkins and half the guests place him at the entrance, but that cloak business bothers me. A minute's absence may be enough to slip out, prick Sir Henry, and slip back. Those cufflinks of his, could they hide a needle?" Poirot nodded, his mind racing. "A possibility, Inspector. But we must also consider Monsieur Grayson, whose intelligence background suggests a man capable of such precision, and Madame Celeste, her perfume with its almond-like note. It is curious, non? We must test it for cyanide, though I suspect it is a red herring, like the vial." Japp dispatched a constable to collect a sample of Celeste's perfume, while Poirot returned to the terrace, drawn by its role as the crime's silent stage. The moonlight revealed the scratch on the railing, a faint scar that whispered of contact. He crouched, his magnifying glass catching the glint of metal, his thoughts on Ashbourne's cufflinks, Grayson's silver ones, Celeste's delicate bracelet. The scratch could be innocent, or a trace of the killer's hand. A footman, passing with a tray, paused at Poirot's request. "Monsieur," Poirot said, his tone disarming, "you saw Lord Ashbourne fetch a cloak last night, oui? How long was he gone, and did he seem hurried?" The footman, a young man with nervous eyes, nodded. "Aye, sir. He stepped to the cloakroom, said it was for a lady's shawl. Gone a minute, maybe two. Came back quick, but his face was red, like he'd been rushing." Poirot thanked him, his mind weaving the footman's words into the tapestry of evidence. 2 minutes, enough to reach the terrace, deliver a fatal prick, and return? Possible, but tight. Ashbourne's desperation, his knowledge of Sir Henry's threats, made him a compelling suspect, yet the mechanics of the crime pointed to a hand more practiced, like Grayson's. Returning to Japp, Poirot shared his findings. "Lord Ashbourne, he is a man cornered by ruin, Inspector. His brief absence, it is a crack in his alibi, but not yet a breach. We must search his rooms for any trace of cyanide, and we must learn what Sir Henry's key unlocked. The truth, it is near, but it dances just beyond our grasp." Japp nodded, his face grim. "I'll have his rooms turned over, and we'll keep digging on Rotterdam. But Poirot, if Ashbourne's clean, we're back to Grayson or Celeste. That needle, it's someone who knew what they were doing." Poirot's smile was resolute. "Oui, Inspector. The killer, they are clever, but they have left their mark. A pinprick, a scratch, a key. Hercule Poirot will follow these to the heart of their desperation, and the truth, it will be revealed." Chapter 11. The Crimson Revelation. The morning sun rose over Ashbourne Hall, its rays piercing the heavy drapes and casting a pale glow across the ballroom where the masquerade had turned to murder. The grandeur of the previous night was a distant memory, replaced by a taut silence that seemed to cling to the chandeliers and damask walls. Hercule Poirot, his impeccable suit, a stark contrast to the disarray of suspicion, had summoned the principal suspects, Lord Ashbourne, Madame Celeste Dubois, and Victor Grayson, to the very scene of Sir Henry Vaughan's death. The ballroom, with its polished parquet and towering mirrors, was a fitting stage for the unveiling of truth, and Poirot, with his unerring genius, intended to direct its final act. The suspects stood in a loose semicircle, their faces a gallery of unease. Lord Ashbourne, his robust frame diminished by sleeplessness, gripped the back of a chair, his gold cufflinks glinting in the sunlight. Madame Celeste, her dancer's poise unbroken, stood with her hands clasped, her dark eyes flickering with a mix of defiance and dread. Victor Grayson, the crimson-masked stranger, leaned against a pillar, his lean features composed but his eyes watchful, like a predator sensing a trap. Inspector Japp, flanked by two constables, stood near the terrace doors, his notebook clutched like a talisman against the chaos of the case. Poirot stepped forward, his small stature commanding the room with the authority of his intellect. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice a quiet but piercing thread. "The murder of Sir Henry Vaughan is a puzzle of exquisite cunning, a tapestry woven with threads of deception, the pinprick on his wrist, the vial in his pocket, the note marked Rotterdam, the key to an empty box. But Hercule Poirot, he sees through the shadows of misdirection to the light of truth. The murderer stands among us, and today their mask will fall." Ashbourne's face flushed, his voice rough. "This is preposterous, Poirot. I was at the entrance, greeting guests. My staff, my guests. They all saw me. I had no reason to kill Sir Henry. He was my only hope." Celeste's eyes flashed, her tone sharp but controlled. "And I, Monsieur Poirot, was dancing my waltz when he died. Dozens can attest to it. I refused his advances, yes, but I did not harm him." Grayson's smile was thin, his voice cool. "You're grasping, Poirot. I spoke to Sir Henry about trade, nothing more. I was on the terrace for a cigarette, not a murder. Look to their motives, not mine." Poirot raised a hand, silencing the protests with a gesture. "Your alibis, they are strong, yet the truth, it is stronger. Let us reconstruct the crime. Sir Henry was poisoned by a needle, delivering cyanide to his blood, a method swift, silent, intimate. The vial, with its trace of poison, was placed in his pocket to suggest a different method, a clumsy suicide or a careless killer. The handkerchief, Madame Celeste. with your initials, was found nearby, stained with claret. A distraction, perhaps, or a frame. The note, Rotterdam, and the key to an empty box, they point to secrets Sir Henry held, secrets worth killing for. He paced, his polished shoes clicking softly on the parquet, his eyes sweeping the trio. Lord Ashbourne, your estate hung in the balance, and Sir Henry's demands threatened your pride, your legacy. You stepped away briefly to fetch a cloak, a moment long enough for a fatal act. Your cufflinks, they are sharp, capable of concealing a needle. Ashbourne's hand slammed on the chair, his voice a growl. I was gone 2 minutes. Hawkins will tell you. I never touched him. Poirot turned to Celeste. Madame, your career was at stake. Sir Henry's threats to ruin you, they cut deep. You were on the terrace, arguing with him, and your handkerchief places you there. Your perfume, with its almond-like note, recalls cyanide. A coincidence, perhaps, but striking. Celeste's hands clenched, her voice trembling. My perfume is no poison, monsieur. I danced, I did not kill. The handkerchief, I dropped it, nothing more. Poirot's gaze settled on Grayson, his eyes like twin blades. And you, Monsieur Grayson, the man in the crimson mask, you are no merchant, but a spy, oui? Your military past, your intelligence work, they mark you as a man of precision. You were on the terrace, your hands quick, your cufflinks sharp. You spoke of trade, but Sir Henry's dealings in Rotterdam, arms, secrets, threatened interests you were tasked to protect. The pinprick, it is your work, non? Grayson's composure held, but his eyes narrowed. You have no proof, Poirot. My cufflinks are clean, my hands empty. I had no quarrel with Sir Henry. Poirot's smile was grim, his voice a quiet thunder. Proof, monsieur, it lies in the details. The scratch on the terrace railing, it matches the edge of your cufflink, a faint mark, but enough. And the vial, so conveniently placed, it is the work of a mind trained in deception, a mind like yours. You poisoned Sir Henry to stop his treasonous deal, a deal that could destabilize nations. The key, the empty box, the burned papers, they were the evidence you sought to destroy, but you could not destroy the truth. Grayson's face hardened, his voice low. You're clever, Poirot, but you're wrong. I was there to watch, not to kill. If Sir Henry was dealing in arms, others had more reason. To stop him. Poirot stepped closer, his eyes locked on Grayson's. Non, monsieur. Your training, your presence, your opportunity, they betray you. The cufflink, it bears a scratch, and a trace of cyanide clings to it, found by the diligent Inspector Japp. You shook Sir Henry's hand, a gesture of courtesy, and in that moment the needle struck. The vial you placed in his pocket, knowing it would confuse us. But Hercule Poirot, he is not so easily deceived. Japp stepped forward, his face grim. We tested the cufflink, Grayson, found a speck of cyanide in the etching. Care to explain that? Grayson's jaw tightened, his eyes flickering with the realization of a trap closing. The room held its breath, the firelight casting his shadow long and wavering. Poirot continued, relentless. You were sent to stop Sir Henry, oui? His dealings in Rotterdam, they were not merely financial, but dangerous, a threat to your masters. You acted with precision, but you could not foresee the scratch, the trace, the mind of Poirot. Grayson's silence broke, his voice low but steady. If I were such a man, Poirot, I'd not be so careless, but you've made your case. What now? Japp signaled to the constables, who moved to flank Grayson. Victor Grayson, you're under arrest for the murder of Sir Henry Vaughan, Japp said, his tone firm. Anything you say can be used against you. Celeste gasped, her hands covering her mouth. Ashbourne's shoulders sagged, relief mingling with exhaustion. Poirot's gaze remained on Grayson, whose composure cracked only slightly, a faint nod acknowledging the game's end. "The truth, mes amis," Poirot said, addressing the room. "It is like the dawn. It breaks, no matter how deep the night. Monsieur Grayson, your gambit was bold, but the smallest details, they betray even the cleverest mind." As Grayson was led away, Poirot stood by the terrace doors, the morning light illuminating the scene of the crime. The puzzle was solved, but the weight of its truth lingered, a reminder of the shadows cast by human ambition. The crimson mask had fallen, and with it, the veil of deception. Chapter 12. The Final Bow. The morning sun climbed higher, bathing Ashbourne Hall in a golden light that seemed to cleanse the shadows of the previous night's revelations. The ballroom, once a stage for revelry and then for murder, stood silent, its chandeliers dim, its mirrors reflecting only the ghosts of the masquerade. Hercule Poirot, his impeccable suit a testament to his unshakable order, stood alone by the terrace doors, his eyes tracing the flagstones where Sir Henry Vaughan had fallen. The case was solved, the crimson mask of Victor Grayson unmasked as the murderer, yet Poirot's mind lingered on the intricacies of human nature that had woven this tragedy. Inspector Japp, his notebook finally closed, joined Poirot, his weathered face softened by the relief of a case concluded. "You've done it again, Poirot," he said, a grudging admiration in his tone. "Grayson's in custody, and he's talking, bit by bit. Admitted he was with military intelligence, tasked to stop Sir Henry's deal. Arms smuggling to foreign agents it was, tied to Rotterdam. Grayson says he acted to protect the nation, but murder's murder." Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile beneath it. "Oui, mon ami, the motive may be grand, but the act, it is a stain. Monsieur Grayson, he played a dangerous game, using the needle to silence Sir Henry and the vial to mislead us. The scratch on the railing, the trace of cyanide on his cufflink, these were the threads that unraveled his deception." Japp nodded, glancing at the terrace. "That cufflink was the clincher, tiny speck of cyanide caught in the etching. He thought he'd cleaned it, but you can't fool those gray cells of yours." Poirot's gaze softened, his eyes distant. "The gray cells, they see what others miss, but the heart, it understands the why. Grayson, he believed his cause was just, yet he underestimated the truth. It always finds a way, like water through stone." The guests, released from their confinement, began to depart, their voices a low murmur of relief and exhaustion. Lord Ashbourne emerged from the drawing-room, his face haggard, but his shoulders straighter, as if a burden had lifted. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, his voice rough but grateful, "you've saved me from ruin, in a way. The merger's dead, but my name is clear. I thank you." Poirot inclined his head, his expression courteous but reserved. "Your gratitude is noted, my lord, but the truth, it serves no master. Your desperation, it was a shadow that clouded the case, yet your alibi held. Be mindful, for secrets, they have a way of returning." Ashbourne nodded, his eyes flickering with unease, and withdrew, leaving Poirot to his thoughts. Madame Celeste Dubois appeared next, her dancer's grace undiminished despite the ordeal. Her midnight blue robe had been replaced by a simple traveling dress, her silver mask packed away with the memories of the ball. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her accent a soft melody, "I am free of suspicion, thanks to you, but I cannot forget Sir Henry's threats, nor the fear of that night." Poirot's gaze was gentle but piercing. "Madame, your secret. It was one of pride, not guilt. Your handkerchief, your presence on the terrace. They were but distractions, skillfully used by Grayson to cast doubt. Your perfume, with its almond note, it was a coincidence that teased the mind. But the truth, it lies in the facts, not the flourishes." Celeste's lips curved into a faint smile, her eyes glistening. "You see so much, monsieur. I will carry this night with me, but I will dance again, free of his shadow." As she departed, Poirot turned to Japp, who was overseeing the final collection of evidence. "The key, Inspector," Poirot said. "The empty box with its burned compartment. What did it hold?" Japp shrugged, his face grim. "Grayson's not saying, but we found ash in a fireplace in Sir Henry's room. Likely papers, contracts maybe, or proof of his smuggling. Grayson got to them before we did, burned the lot to cover his tracks." Poirot nodded, his mind piecing together the final threads. The Rotterdam deal, it was a web of treason, and Sir Henry, he was its reckless architect. Grayson, he acted to sever the thread, but in doing so, he wove his own trap. The key, the note, the box, they were the echoes of a secret now lost, but the murder, it speaks clearly. Japp clapped Poirot on the shoulder, a rare gesture. "You're a marvel, Poirot. We'd have been chasing that vial for weeks without you. What now? Back to your quiet life?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic, his eyes drifting to the chandelier, its crystals catching the morning light. "The quiet life, mon ami? Non, the world. It is never quiet. There are always masks, always secrets, waiting for Hercule Poirot to unveil them." As Japp departed to finalize Grayson's transfer to London, Poirot lingered in the ballroom, his gaze sweeping the empty space. The terrace doors stood open, the morning breeze carrying the scent of dew and roses. He stepped outside, his polished shoes silent on the flagstones, and paused where Sir Henry had fallen. The scratch on the railing, the pinprick, the crimson mask, they were the markers of a crime solved, yet Poirot's mind lingered on the human cost. Grayson's duty, Ashbourne's desperation, Celeste's fear. Each was a facet of the tragedy, a reminder that even in victory, the heart bore its scars. "The human heart, it wears many masks," Poirot murmured, his voice a whisper to the wind. "But the truth, it always shines through." He turned, his silhouette small but resolute against the rising sun, and walked back into the hall, ready for the next puzzle that awaited his singular genius.